Aloha, everyone! This is Our Undoing Radio, and if you've been listening to this season, I've had instances where, like, I do an episode, and then the next day, something of that episode strikes me. Like, for instance, as soon as I recorded the episode on how we are not outdated tech and how, this complete faith we put into our ability to run a techno world such that we could eventually throw ourselves into that technology and have that be the world. I do that, and then the next day, Microsoft goes down all around the world. So, it's been like that with this season a little bit. I'm trying to remember. There was another one that happened. Well, there was one in real life. Like, I recorded the thing about the dude who is the psychiatrist who, does shaman-y stuff and then ultimately wants to, sell it. Sell hallucinogenic plant medicines in convenient capsule form as drugs, or whatever the ultimate pharmacological plan is that they want to do with that. And then in life, my wife and I meet this guy who we end up in a bit of a chat with, and he's like one of those super happy-go-lucky, high-energy guys, and people always ask me how I'm like this, and he has this whole spiel about how he's like this, but then we get into what he actually does is microdose shrooms. So it's like, oh, I see. You're actually running into happiness from whatever your situation is. You're not actually happy from the inside, like naturally, without stimulants. I got it. So there's that. And of course, he's anti-big pharma. It's funny how many people, it used to just be people who would show up at your door, like Jesus salespeople, who'd show up and be like, have you ever heard of Jesus? And then you're like, yeah, who hasn't heard of, I'm 50 years old. I've heard of Jesus, and now I've got to have these other conversations. It's like, I'm 50 years old. I live in Hawaii. Yes, I've heard of the benefits of mushrooms. I've heard of the benefits of hemp. Do we have to? Yes, I know. Big pharma, bad. Government out to get you. Yes, I've had all of these conversations and or heard them 8 million times. Do we really need to keep rehashing this? But it becomes this calling card to see if, we're one of you, one of us. And we're not. So we're not one or two of you. However the math works out, we're a couple. So couples tend to start to think alike. But I think we were already on the same page before we were a couple. But really, we do this with everything, right? I just was griping on the Twitter about how many paranormal podcasters, specifically UFO podcasters, do I need to see who are just coming to this grand revelation that people who claim to be abducted by aliens have a whole host of high strangeness phenomena happen to them in their lives. And people might not think it's all connected, or they might think it's outlandish, like how much can happen to one person, but there it is. And it's like, yeah, I know, because we've been talking about this for decades. And these are the same podcasters who are like, I did my research or I've been researching this and it's like, they say that, but then their questions and their eureka revelations are as if they've never picked up a book, never listened to a podcast that came before them, never, heard of any other alternative theories than the ones that they're astounded aren't working, like aliens. How many of these do we need where we're pretending to do research, but it's actually to enlighten the audience to something that they should already know? And if they don't, it's because this isn't really a study. It isn't really a field of study or a class-like situation. Or else people would already know where to look. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So it really is about just sort of, oh, look at the thing I've discovered, and now I'm going to tell you about it as if it's brand new because it's new to me. But at the same time, I'm a researcher. I'm a historian in this of some sort. And it's like, but you just came to this and your questions are all basic and you still believe like hypnosis and fake whistleblowers and fake cases and on and on and on are all legit. And yet, once again, as was the case decades ago, you're the very same people in different bodies who are trying to figure out how to make the mainstream media pay attention to this and take it seriously. And yet, you don't know enough to not promote unserious tools of research and complete garbage characters within the field. So this is a perpetual problem. This is the thing to be studied. This is the sociology of ufology. But as it turns out, it's just life, right? Like apparently, I don't know what goes into the mind of someone who can like show up at your door and say, "Have you ever heard of Jesus?" You know, like, or in the field of ufology, or any field of specialty where you're like, "Hey, have you ever heard of the most obvious thing that everyone's heard of?" Well, I'm here to tell you all about it because it's new. Like, what is this? And if it turns out that I'm just griping because I'm old, like I'm getting old, I'm like 50 or something. That's like right on the hill. Like, I guess this year I go over that hill, right? So if that's the problem, then that's just putting it on the old people to be like, listen, that old cantankerous fool whining. Old cantankerous fool, it turns out, is whining. Here's a spoiler alert, youngins, because we've seen this over and over again. Apparently, it's just what people do. It's another one of those things that we just do generation after generation. And now, as an old cantankerous fool, I think I'm the only one experiencing the amnesia of the obvious. Coming to this revelation about the amnesia of the obvious that other people are partaking in, but not me. And I guess a lot of people come to that in their old age after having discovered that we are, in fact, just a bunch of repetitions. And then we whine about it. So that's me. That's me whining about the repetitions in a repetitious way that my forefathers and mothers probably whined about it also. All right. None of that is the point, of course. Or is it? Let's find out. I had a couple other, really one question, but two posts from, I think, a He's So Vaeni episode that I was going to use as the context of what will be the final episode of this show, which I haven't recorded yet. But then I actually came upon a Science Alert article from sciencealert.com that I thought might fit this better. And also, it's not often, or at all really, that I ever read an article and critique it as I go. And since that's kind of in line with what I do with He's So Vaeni, except instead of articles, I'm critiquing videos, maybe it'll work. So I'm going to, first I'm going to read this. This is from JS7177, who commented on a video of mine somewhere on YouTube, talking about spiritual experiences and saying too much of these types of experiences are just subjective. We need some kind of objective corroboration. And I answered that, and then he clarified what he meant, and went on to say in another post, when I talk about having some kind of objective corroboration, it's that if we have some sort of repeatable process that gives similar insights, something anyone can do and have the same experience, or is all this a type of self-inflicted brainwashing to want to become a more spiritually enlightened individual? And I think both can be true. This is where Ken Wilber comes in. Ken Wilber, the integral psychologist, mapped out the cosmos with a K, the inner cosmos. He basically looked at all of the religious claims, large and small, and pieced together. If you take out the politics and you take out the cultural artifacts, and you are left with the alleged paths to these truths, or let's say, to these epiphanies and these experiences, it is objective corroboration. Like you can, what he's claiming, and I think it's true, all you have to do is ask a Buddhist. If you do the Buddhist thing, for instance, whatever meditation they have, you will come to the same or a similar either insight or experience or deity. And koans, I mean Zen koans. If you work on a Zen koan long enough, you'll have the big insight revealed, and it's the same insight for everyone, right? So there is that, if you want to call it objective corroboration, but what's it getting to? That will actually be the focus of the last episode, so no spoilers there, but you're also asking, is this a type of self-inflicted brainwashing to want to become a more spiritually enlightened individual? Well, maybe it's not totally fair to answer that because I don't have in front of me what the video is that he's responding to. So what's on the video that I'm critiquing could very well be a type of self-inflicted brainwashing. I mean, I know plenty of people, as I'm sure many of you do, or many of you even are, who don't know who you are. And so you will, for instance, if someone says, like, you watch a video of someone or you go to a seminar or something, a workshop, and they're like, I'm an empath. These are the qualifications of an empath, and you're an empath too. And then you're like, wow, I am. I have all of those personality traits. I really feel like crying when I see a bird injured or something. I don't know what. I said that because I'm a bird guy now. But yeah, so then you might adopt that persona. You might start listening to how those people talk. You might adopt their language. You might adopt their body language. You want to have your bona fides, and so you mimic. And why? Because you don't have a real strong sense of yourself. We know people like this, right? This is one way people create their own reality. They reinvent themselves as they go along when whatever they invented previously stops working for them. But I also think that there is a self-inflicted brainwashing that, again, Buddhists, and I have to pick on them because I'm just more familiar with the fact of the repetition, right? That's built in. Like, keep doing this thing over and over and over again. And maybe it's the same thing with prayer for various other religions. If you keep praying, or you just keep focusing on this one thing over and over and over again, eventually you may experience that or something like it. I think that is a self-induced hallucination, if not brainwashing. I mean, certainly it's a self-induced hallucination. Ken Wilber may say, no, it's not. You are actually experiencing states and stages of consciousness that are revealed once you understand in the way that you need to, for the code to be cracked and for the revelation to flower within you, But I think both of those things can be true at the same time, because I think the only thing that would be a lie, if promised, is that through this repetition, nothingness will become you, or you will lose your, the sense of self will be dissolved. If that's what they're promising, then that's the lie. But if they're promising a thing that you're going to see or experience, or a state or a stage on the spiritual hierarchy, then sure, you may experience that. And that may be more clarifying for you than what you had before, what you were before. But it's almost like, like you learn in school, you learn knowledge, you learn. Nowadays, it's technical, it's robotic. But, prior to, George Bush's No One Left Behind BS, and hopefully some college professors and teachers are still trying to preserve this, but, it used to not just be like, I learn things, so that way I have a memory of things, so that way I can get a job. But, no, it's supposed to expand your consciousness, and, you're supposed to understand diversity and revel in the newness that is like challenging your brain and changing your neural pathways and all of that. And then you maybe you can develop a love of learning, But this type of thing, it's kind of like that, except it's more, I think it's even more um, psychological in the sense that I think that to really get there, whatever there is, to the next revelation, is to have clarity. So it's not just you're learning something, but you're clearing something up within you. Clarity over nagging questions about life, the universe, and everything, or questions about humanity or your own parents or why you do things in life. Those, all of those types of questions. When the answer is revealed, you have clarity, and they're no longer nagging at you. They're no longer, you're not carrying them in your body anymore. And so all of that feels like spiritual revelation. You feel better. Now, what I would ask is, are you actually better? Are you a better person? Like, is there such thing as a better person? Or, how many of these people have these revelations and then are jerks? Or narcissists, or whatever. And then Ken Wilber's got an answer for that too, which is you can be a spiritual 10, but a psychological 2. Which is convenient. You could be a spiritual 10 and a psychological 2, but I would say that tells you that working a hierarchy then is not healthy. Is the false thing to do. It's the thing to do when you're in duality, but it has nothing to do with non-duality. It has nothing to do with I amness that comes from the lack of self, which comes from nothingness. You know what I mean? The thing that I've been talking about forever. Because then you don't need to climb states and stages of a hierarchy. All that you need to be, you will be in the moment. Which, and a way to see this sort of concretely, although you still can't because it's my experience, is the Kundalini thing with me, right? Like, so if I shut up for a second, I become nothing. And in that nothingness, Kundalini takes over. And what that means is this seemingly other will or bunch of other wills will maneuver the body in the healthiest way possible, in ways that I don't understand, that look like Tai Chi or look like yoga or look like a whole bunch of things, energy works, acupressure, all kinds of stuff. Whirling dervish twirls, go down the list. I'm going down the list. Hey, I'm talking to myself right now. And I don't have any knowledge of any of those things. I know the words. I know the words whirling dervish twirl, but only because I saw someone doing them. And then I was like, oh, that looks like what I do. What is that? But I don't actually know what any of this, I don't take yoga classes. I don't know meditation. I don't know any of that crap. And the thing is, I don't need to. I don't need that knowledge, because that knowledge becomes me in my absence to the perfect, balanced, healthy proportion that I need in that moment, or that this body needs in the moment, or that the environment around me needs me to do in that moment, or the people around me need for me to do in that moment. It can be a bunch of things, but it all is need. And so it's not like rote memory or doing a bunch of exercises over and over and over again, exercising the same way, doing the same things because that's what you're taught to do. It's like, no, if those things are needed, they will happen in proper proportion, or they won't, or whatever. So I don't need to climb a hierarchy to do that. I don't need to go to school to do that. I don't need any further clarification or revelation for this to happen. The stuff of that hierarchy works me. The stuff of those educated people is working me. So I don't actually need to know any of it. There's no need. In fact, my knowledge would get in the way. Me trying to do anything in the moment that this is active is a hindrance to its movement. Which sometimes I do. Sometimes I actually try to predict what's going to happen, because sometimes the movements are repetitive, and I think like, okay, I've done this A to B to C before. So it's like you want to get in there and help out sometimes, but it gets in the way, and it's not it may have been A to B to C the first 50 times, but it's not this time, and you're wrong. And so just shut up. Like, that's what I do. I just shut up. And you'd think what I'm saying would be more popular given that our culture loves quick fixes, and we love laziness. And, like, this is the laziest quick fix ever. If you can just find out how to shut up so that nothingness is the case, and that nothingness has its own energy and consciousness, and that consciousness does the healthy thing that you are in the way blocking out to do unhealthy stuff, you just relax and sit back and eat your nachos and watch the magic of exercise happen to the body, Isn't that what we all want, folks? God, I wish I could sell this to you somehow, but there's just no way. There's nothing to sell. Anyway, let's now take a look at this ScienceAlert.com article, Meditation and Mindfulness Have a Dark Side That We Don't Talk About. This is written by Miguel Farias, F-A-R-I-A-S. It says, by Miguel Farias, The Conversation. So, I don't know what that means, but again, the article is Meditation and Mindfulness Have a Dark Side That We Don't Talk About, and I will post a link to it in this episode. So I'm just going to read a little bit of it and respond. He's saying, since mindfulness is something you can practice at home for free, it often sounds like the perfect tonic for stress and mental health issues. Mindfulness is a type of Buddhist-based meditation in which you focus on being aware of what you're sensing, thinking, and feeling in the present moment. The first recorded evidence for this, found in India, is over 1,500 years ago. The Dharma Trada meditation scripture, written by a community of Buddhists, describes various practices and includes reports of symptoms of depression and anxiety that can occur after meditation. It also details cognitive anomalies associated with episodes of psychosis, dissociation, and depersonalization when people feel the world is unreal. In the past 8 years, there has been a surge of scientific research in this area. These studies show that adverse effects are not rare. A 2022 study, using a sample of 953 people in the U.S. who meditated regularly, showed that over 10% of participants experienced adverse effects, which had a significant negative impact on their everyday life and lasted for at least 1 month. According to a review of over 40 years of research that was published in 2020, the most common adverse effects are anxiety and depression. These are followed by psychotic or delusional symptoms, dissociation or depersonalization, and fear or terror. And then he goes into how research has found that these adverse effects can happen to people without previous mental health issues, so on and so forth. And that we've known about this for a long time, like even in the West, we've known about this for a long time. And then he says, there is evidence that mindfulness can benefit people's well-being. The problem is that mindfulness coaches, videos, apps, and books rarely warn people about the potential adverse effects. And then he says it's become a kind of capitalist spirituality, this mindfulness. And then he talks about how much meditation is worth as an industry in the U.S. It's $1 billion industry in the U.S. And so all of these, people who are selling it to you should be aware of the problems with it. And then he says, in his foreword to the 2015 UK Mindfulness All-Party Parliamentary Report, John Kabat-Zinn suggests that mindfulness meditation can eventually transform, quote, who we are as human beings and individual citizens, as communities and societies, as nations, and as a species, end quote. This religious-like enthusiasm for the power of mindfulness to change not only individual people, but the course of humanity is common among advocates. Even many atheists and agnostics who practice mindfulness believe that this practice has the power to increase peace and compassion in the world. Media discussion of mindfulness has also been somewhat imbalanced. In 2015, my book with clinical psychologist Catherine Wilcombe, Buddha Pill, included a chapter summarizing the research on meditation adverse effects. It was widely disseminated by the media, including a New Scientist article and a BBC Radio 4 documentary. But there was little media coverage in 2022 of the most expensive study in the history of meditation science, over $8 million funded by research charity The Wellcome Trust. The study tested more than 8,000 children aged 11 to 14 across 84 schools in the UK from 2016 to 2018. Its results showed that mindfulness failed to improve the mental well-being of children compared to a control group, and may even have had detrimental effects on those who were at risk of mental health problems. And then gets into the ethical implications of selling mindfulness apps, teaching people to meditate, or even mindfulness in clinical practices, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to say, well, first of all, it's hilarious to me that someone is basically saying, look, this is an industry. This is, Mick Meditation, which is, I guess, a book that he cites. And you've written a book, right? So your book is a part of this industry, this cottage industry, This gets to, again, in UFO world, when you've got the debunkers who, have made a name for themselves, formed a community, made money on books and stuff. Probably they've made less money than they have fame for themselves, or a name, whatever, subculture fame. Maybe they've been on TV a few times, whatever. But you know what I mean? It's you've made a name for yourself complaining about the cottage industry that you are very much a part of. That's part of the cottage industry, and so is this. So that to me is already disingenuous in some way. And also saying oh, there was a study done that children have no effect for mindfulness, therefore what? It's like a placebo or something. No, kids wouldn't, would they? Kids don't have even fully formed brains, let alone, you know what I mean? They're not fully formed people. So there's some things that they're not going to have access to, and that's actually part of Ken Wilber's, something that Ken Wilber has talked about, which is right, children don't need to do this meditation stuff. It is actually, these revelations can come later in adult life. They can't really come to you as children. And that's part of the pre-logical, translogical fallacy. That people think that because kids are pre-logical, that they're all little Buddhas. But they're not, because they're not translogical. They're just pre-logical. I think I've got that right. If I don't, someone let me know. But I think that's the gist of what he has meant by that in the past, in that context of children. But also, I just wanted to talk about the scariness of it, all of the negative stuff that they're talking about. Again, this gets me to, even with Kundalini, when I talk to people who swear that their Kundalini is awakened, my Kundalini, you've never heard me talk about my Kundalini, have you? You've never heard me, if I have, it's been by accident or something. But in general, you don't ever hear me say my, because you would never say that if you were so alive. You wouldn't say my oneness. You would, my non-duality, my nothingness. But nevertheless, all of these people who talk about my Kundalini experiences, if they are having any Kundalini experience, it's a screwed up version of it, of trying to remain the self while having this energy come alive that is not the self. Now, I would submit to you that probably they are mistaking other phenomena with, and other energies in their own body for this Kundalini, but it sounds cool and fashionable to say Kundalini, so they say that. But if I am wrong, then I'm not wrong that all of these things that they talk about as symptoms of Kundalini awakening are hot garbage, because that's not the way it works. There is no turning it on and off. There is no starting the engine, turning off the engine. There's no, you're either there or you're not there, and in your absence, this energy may move you. And so all of these instances of fear and terror and schizophrenic reaction and all of that, there may be phantom fears and, that are associated with certain instances with this Kundalini coming alive, especially in the beginning at least, when, if you're like me and you have nothing to compare it to but horror movies, then yeah, you might feel this phantom fear. But they're talking about mindfulness meditation. They're not even talking about the Kundalini thing. But it's kind of, because what I was going to say about that, at least in terms of Kundalini, is like, yeah, you may feel this, but it doesn't matter because you're going with the flow, man. Just don't get in the way and you'll be fine. But in the mindfulness meditation stuff, this does get into what the final episode is going to be, which is if you're still there, if you're the one meditating, if you're the one being mindful or whatever, even if your goal, I don't know what the mindfulness meditation is, but let's say that you're doing meditation where the goal is to quiet your mind even, or just have an allowance of allowing thoughts and feelings and associations to float by. And if you're doing that, and in the process of doing that, something scary happens, or paranormal, or a phantom terror, is that not coming from the human consciousness, the human collective? First, I think the first place to look is your own subconscious. Like, is it not welling up from within you? Is it not these things that we call like taboo fears or taboo feelings that we have stuffed down and suppressed? Are they trying to come up? Are they trying to express themselves? They are you. Like, we talk about them as if they are these feelings and these fears and these things that are different from us that we have stuffed down. But they're actually us that we have divided. We've cut off by disclaiming them or disowning them, or however you want to say that. They are us, but they're the us that we don't want to be dealing with in a self-conscious way. Because the way that we have set up our self-conscious is like, to be in society, you've got to put on a certain face. And so whatever your society says is taboo, you don't want that to be on your face. You don't want to have egg on your face. So whatever makes you feel bad and negative and scared and ashamed and all that, those are all you, those feelings. But you say, those aren't me. So the initial thing that we do is schizophrenic, is a form of schizophrenia, in my opinion. I guess I will say that's right? Because I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know. Legally, do I have to say that? But it's what we do, right? So, as you're further dividing yourself by saying, I'm going to quiet this mind that is the self. I'm going to be mindful. Not mindless, mindful. Then do the other parts of you that you've been suppressing say to themselves, oh, I guess we should come up then. We should surface. Because that guy is gone. And then is that like scary and maybe unrecognizable as you because you've suppressed it? And then furthermore, beyond that, is there not also the collective? The stuff of the collective, including archetypes and so forth. So, yeah, I can see how there will be, it's not all love and light. There's moments of fear and stuff because it's still disingenuous, which is, again, my problem with Ken Wilber. Because silence is silence. And in that silence is the consciousness, the self-awareness, the totality of healthy consciousness becomes one. And anything that's not that is just more human crap. Right? More thought constructs, more repressed material. And I think to the extent that it's not, that it's positive material, that it's good, that it's beneficial, that it feels good, I mean, just ask yourself, how long does that last? Do you have to not surround yourself with negative people, Do you have to not be judgmental and not surround yourself with judgmental people because they give you a rash or something, Like, is this what you have to do to maintain this happiness that you think is balance when you're out of the mindfulness meditation? So that the mindfulness meditation, trying to keep the good vibes going, creates a further sense of repression and a further shielding yourself from society even, or from your family. Now, if you're going to write an article and say like, oh, well, we need to look at all of this, Yeah, but be real clear with what you're actually looking at. Be real clear with what the actual culprit of the problem is. Because sure, these people may all know that these meditations can create negative effects or adverse, emotional reactions or whatever. But much like the drug culture, perhaps they believe that if you get the right set and setting, you'll never have a bad trip. Right? If you just do the mindfulness meditation the right way, it'll always be love and light, or it'll always be inner calm and peace for 20 minutes. They may believe that too. And if the real culprit is the mind of not just the master of that meditation, not just the pupil of that meditation, but of you, the person writing the article, calling attention to it all, if that mind is the mind that has to go for authentic balance to be the case, let's say, authentic mental well-being and health to be the case, then are you willing to have that discussion too? Because if not, if you're just going to keep it in the realm of relativity and duality and states and stages of lesser evils, then you're always going to run up against this problem and be baffled as to how it is that they could have let this go for so long without saying anything. Because it's not just a problem of like, oh, this is $1 billion industry. I mean, that's great to like take a pulled back perspective and look at the amounts of money that are made off of like mindfulness meditation or whatever. But I can pretty much guarantee you that most people who are teaching it or who are students of it aren't thinking about it in those terms. There are probably better ways to make a living. I would think. I don't know. They really legit think that it's helpful, and when we think that something is so helpful, it is sort of human nature, or at least Western mentality nature, to downplay the negatives. Because part of what we're selling there is a sense of how reality works that is false, but we're selling it to ourselves. Not unlike the preacher who goes door to door saying, hey, have you heard of Jesus? Somebody who is so dedicated to spreading the word of God to people isn't dedicated. The facade is, I am telling you something to save you, to save your soul. I'm giving you the good word for you. But really what you're doing is you're living a lie, and you can only sustain that lie by winning other people over to your point of view so that you feel validated. That's all we all ever do, from that to, the I'm an empath person to these people doing the mindfulness meditation. Yeah, I've had some bad experiences, but you know what? Those aren't so bad because I've really found something that I connect with and that I really, really want to be reality, and I really, really want this to work, and so I need you to do it too so that I know that it's real, because I know it's not real deep down, because the reality of me, I am blocking out from myself, and on some level, I know that. And I have to express that to myself in these other ways, through dreams, through inventions, through, little reminders, little like wake-up calls straight out of Total Recall to try to tell you like you're asleep, dude, and you're doing it to yourself. Right? And we're all doing that. So until you notice that part, then you're part of the industry too. All right, the end. I think I've made my point and then giggled about it. So I've done my job here. That's my duality. Make a point, giggle, and then nothingness.